Today I'm starting a new series and I haven't come up with a catchy title. There were a few options and I couldn't decide on one. So I'm just calling it Shia LaBeouf for this series because it's about him and his recent interview. So this is part one, Shia LaBeouf. And this one is having to do around one of his quotes in his interview. He said, "Joy is sacred," and he said it with like conviction. Um, and like, if I think most people, when they watch that interview, Shia might seem a little unhinged or just like a radical weirdo, and the things that he's saying in regards to Christianity might not make sense. But if you're able to look past like um what might be considered as like messy and look at like who he is and what he's saying, like a lot of the stuff he's saying is genuine and true and authentic, and he possesses the substance of Christianity, and he has a union with the living God and with Jesus, so he's able to speak freely from a place of conviction and experience. And it's like those words are true, even though he's not quoting like Bible verses, he's speaking from the heart. But what he's saying is true. So this one is having to do with joy is sacred. Rebecca agrees. So to start off, it has to do with to explain it of why like Shia LaBeouf, when he says joy is sacred, how that's true. Like if you ask him like, Shia, can you explain how joy is sacred? He might not be able to explain it, but I can explain it for him because I agree with him and I understand what he's saying. So I'm going to explain it. So this is it's having to do with the temple. Like to understand like what he's saying, you kind of have to understand this concept of the temple and how it's like this repeated pattern throughout scripture. Like when Moses he created the temple according to the pattern that God showed him on the mountain. It's a fractal. It's a repeating pattern throughout scripture. And we see it beginning in Eden, and we see it like with the tabernacle and the temple, and we also see it in our body. And elements in these temples also are transferable. Like the pattern is projected, and some of the elements might change form as the form of the temple is also changed. So, like with Eden, you have the river. With the temple, you have the fountain flowing underneath the throne room of God. Also, at the end of Revelation, you have that same temple, and our body is a temple. And like in James, when it talks about our speech, it's like a fountain, it's a river, sending forth either poisonous water or pure water. So, with all of these temple structures, you see these elements carried with them. And this little circle with the 1, 2, 3, 1 is like representative of the Holy of Holies. So you have like the most sacred part, and then like as you go outward, it's like less sacred, less holy. But at the center, like that's the most sacred. That's the Holy of Holies. Also, in that interview, Shia LaBeouf starts talking about G.K. Chesterton, and he says, "Do you fuck with G.K. Chesterton?" I haven't read him, so maybe I should start. But I haven't fucked with G.K. Chesterton, but I do fuck with G.K. Beale. So this diagram, he talks about it in this book. Right here. So this talks more about the temple of God. God dwells among us, expanding Eden to the ends of the earth. So Shia LaBeouf, if you don't fuck with G.K. Beale, you should fuck with G.K. Beale. And I'll start reading G.K. Chesterton. So there's like the temple structure. Yep, 1, 2, 3. So here's my second point. So here's like the temple structure with the Garden of Eden. So in this setting, you have west as towards the presence of God, and you have east towards, like, away from the presence of God. It's the direction of exile. So here in Eden, like in Genesis 2:8, there was a garden towards the east, and like the tree of life is in the midst of the garden. And there was a river that flowed out of Eden to water the garden, um, flowed out of Eden to water the garden, and there it divided and became 4 rivers. So you have like that river element flowing out of Eden to water the garden, then it became four rivers. And then when Adam and Eve are exiled, you have the flaming swords east of Eden to guard the way to the tree of life. So you have like that same structure, and I think that's actually the one that he talks about with his circle diagram. It's Eden. Yeah. Yep. So Eden, garden, outer world. You have like the Holy of Holies, the holy place, in the outer court. So you have that same like 3 partisan structure. I just drew it like west to east. Yep. So west is the presence of God. East is towards exile, and like when Cain, when he was exiled, he was also exiled away from the presence of God east, towards the land of Nod, I believe, Genesis 4:16. So like in Eden, it's the presence of God in exile. It's referred to with like east and west, like the cardinal directions. Like west is the cardinal direction towards the presence of God. East is towards exile, but it can also be expressed with like elevation. So like the presence of God is like a mountain peak. Like Moses, when he ascended Sinai, he went to the top, and like elders only came like part of the way, and like some elders came up at the base, and like the rest of the assembly couldn't even touch the mountain. They stayed at the base of the mountain. So it can be expressed with elevation, with like the mountain peak, Mount Sion, Mount Sinai, Mount Horeb, or Mount Zion. And then like it's away from the presence of God is like the pit descending into Sheol, and like the depth. So you also have like that ascension expressed in elevation with like mountain peaks and pits and valleys and ditches. So part 3, the living God. So the living God is holy, sacred, and pure. He is holy. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. His substance, his being, the divine nature. He is holy, sacred, and pure. And God is also the origin and source of things like goodness, truth, wisdom, righteousness, life, blessings. So God is holy, and he is the origin and source of all of these things. And that which proceeds from God also possesses those characteristics. Like the words of God, they proceed forth. They proceed from the mouth of God. Jesus, he said, I proceeded forth and have come from God. Creation proceeds from God. In Hebrews 11, that which is created has their origin in that which is unseen. So like the words of God are also pure. Jesus, when he came, there's no unrighteousness in him. Creation is pure, but it's being ruled by men that are corrupt. So it's experiencing form of corruption because those that rule over it are corrupt. So since man has remaining corruption in them, it's like creation is subject to that corruption as well. It's like the movie like Dark Waters, where you have like the Teflon plant and like all the waters get poisoned and like creation gets corrupt. Creation gets corrupt by corrupt men ruling over it, but creation in and of itself is not corrupt. So the heart of man, that's like the inner man. That's like the Holy of Holies with like our human body, man. We're a temple in which God can dwell. And it's like the seat of dwelling is, like our conscience, in our mind, and in our heart, in our inner man. So here, Psalm 51, behold, you desire truth in the innermost being, and in the hidden part, you will make me know wisdom. So again, like God is the origin and source of truth. God is the origin and source of wisdom. And these two things in this verse, it's like you desire truth in the innermost being. In the hidden part, you will make me know wisdom. Like this is how God dwells, like enters into the heart of man and is with us through his word, through his word living and abiding with us by receiving his word, acknowledging it, and taking heed to it. So then I do the little heart where it's like truth and wisdom abide in us, in our innermost being. And that's how like we become sanctified. Not just like memorizing scripture, but allowing it to enter our hearts. And that our will is also in alignment also. So also with man here in John 7, he who believes in me, as the scripture said, from his innermost being will flow rivers of living water. But this he spoke of the Spirit. So again, you have like the innermost being, the heart of man, the inner man. From his innermost being will flow rivers of living water. So again, you have that imagery of like we're a temple, the heart, our inner man, is the Holy of Holies. And from the Holy of Holies, you have like rivers of living water. And like James, it talks about taming the tongue. And it says like, like if you have a river and you have it with like blessing, cursing, truth, lies, fresh, bitter, that's just indicative that it's a polluted well. It's a corrupt well. But the more that you purify your speech and resist the temptation of Satan to like lie, to curse, to be bitter, or speak bitter things to people, like if you purify your speech, that is a way that you can purify yourself by taming your tongue. If you can tame the tongue, then you can control your whole body. Also, in that interview, Shia, you said you were a little self-conscious because you said that someone told me today I was performative, something along those words. I wanted to go back and listen to it to find the exact words, but I didn't. So, like, if someone said that to you, consider the source. Like, to the extent that someone has corruption abiding in their heart, well, their words are also going to be subject to that same corruption. So if you have a corrupt person speaking to you, well, their words could also be corrupt. It doesn't mean they're true. If they're an evil person and they're speaking, well, consider the source. If to the extent that one's heart has remaining corruption abiding in it, well, the words that they speak are going to be corrupt also. They're not going to be pure. There's going to be falsehood. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So if you have corruption abiding in the heart of man, well, the words that they speak are going to be corrupt, subject to that corruption also. So don't give ear to their words, and don't receive their words into your heart. Like if someone who is corrupt speaks things to you, and those words contain corruption, well, if you turn your ear towards them and you allow them to enter into your ear and you hear them and they enter in your heart, like if you believe their words, well, that's one way that corruption can enter into your heart. So consider who you believe. Don't believe everything you hear. And I think in Ecclesiastes it also says like something about like don't eavesdrop on your servant lest you hear her cursing you. And also remember, like, you've cursed others. Like, don't give ear to it. Also, even if you were performative at times, or you are performative at times, like, who cares? You're an actor. Consider it a push-up. Consider it that you're cultivating your skill, you're honing your craft. In that interview, he talks about how there's no such thing as talents. It's just push-ups. I understand what he's saying. So even if you are performative at times, just consider it as doing a push-up. You're an actor. That's your job. Yep, consider it as a push-up. Like, why is that an insult if Shia LaBeouf is if he has segments of being performative? I think by and large you're an honest man, and what you see is who you are. So if you have like short segments of being performative in the public eye, I don't take fault with that, Shia. So the fifth point, yep, joy is sacred. Shia LaBeouf. This is going to be your new hashtag, your new tagline, your quote. Maybe, if you want it to be. So here, Psalm 16:11, you will make known to me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. In your right hand there are pleasures forevermore. So I really like this verse because it ties back into that Eden imagery with exile, and that they were exiled east, and the cherubim with the flaming sword were put at the east of the garden to guard the way to the tree of life. It's not that they just guarded the tree of life. They guarded the way to the tree of life. So it's like the path of life is guarded, and it's hidden. But here, I think this is a Psalm of David. You will make known to me the path of life. And in your presence is fullness of joy. So it's like as you go to the path of life and to the tree of life and back towards the presence of God, it's like as you enter in back into restoration, there's fullness of joy. In your right hand there are pleasures forevermore. And for a period of time, I had a little small business where I did my designs, and it was called West Eden. And that's the little verse that I put in the logo, Psalm 16:11, and that's why I included that, because it reminded me of the Eden imagery. You will make known to me the path of life. It's like that which is hidden and guarded by the cherubim and the swords of flaming fire. It's like it's made known to us, and it's like through that path of life that we can enter back into the presence of God. And in the presence of God, there's fullness of joy. And like that's the presence of God, the holies of holies. That's where there's joy in that realm. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. So here, like that little blue bubble, that's like depicting God as like the origin and source. I think I had it earlier about God being holy and sacred, and I don't know if I put pure. So God is also the origin and source of joy. Joy proceeds forth from God, and it can enter into the heart of man. Here in Psalm 4:7, you have put gladness in my heart, more than when their grain and new wine abound. So we can receive joy and gladness like directly by God abiding in our heart. But if you have like remaining corruption, then God can't abide in your heart. So it has to be delivered through like secondary means. God can't be a primary source of joy if you still have a heart that has idolatry and corruption, and it's like you want to receive joy from money or this or that or wine directly. So to the extent that one has remaining corruption and idolatry, that's the extent that God can't abide in their heart. So God can't be a primary source of joy, but he can bring it through secondary means like marriage, work, wine, all of the things in creation that are good, that are a good source of joy to man. So you have put gladness in my heart more than when their grain and new wine abound. If someone is experiencing joy and gladness in a right way, like ultimately the origin and source is God. God has put that gladness in their heart. Psalm 104:15 talks about what God has made. The whole psalm is like God's works in creation. This one says, and wine, which makes man's heart glad, so that he may make his face glisten with oil. Also, I have another YouTube video that talks about wine and substances and drunkenness, so I might have a little clip, and people can watch that if they want to kind of understand this concept more. So God has made wine, and the purpose of wine is that it makes man's heart glad. So it's like when man drinks wine and it makes their heart glad, it changes their disposition, they experience an elevation of spirit. It's like it comes from wine, but ultimately it's like, well, wine came forth from God. So instead of seeking joy perpetually in wine, it's like, well, if consuming wine has this effect on my spirit, it's like, well, the creator of wine is that much more better. Like if this came forth from God, it's like taste and see that the Lord is good. It's like that should cause you to seek joy in the creator as opposed to continually seeking joy in the substance. Yep. So God has made wine, which makes man's heart glad. So knowing that, it's like you should seek joy in the ultimately look past wine to its creator and seek to make the living God your primary source of joy. Not that you can't still partake of wine and receive joy and gladness from that, but it has to be in its right place. Like once you have the fullness of joy that comes from God abiding in you, being free of corruption, not being given over to idolatry, like knowing that God is when the living God is your primary source of joy, it puts wine in its proper place as like a secondary source of joy that you can partake of, to the extent that it can make your heart glad. The issue comes with like abundance, like those that linger long at wine. So it's like the amount and the frequency is when it becomes a problem. So yep. So that's why when Shia LaBeouf says joy is sacred, yeah, like joy is holy. In God's presence is fullness of joy. God is holy. God is sacred. God is pure. And in God's presence, there's fullness of joy. Like joy is sacred also. And when we experience joy, rightfully, it's like, well, that's sacred. Joy is sacred. Our hearts are sacred. You've put gladness in my heart. Like that's how we have union and communion with God, when we experience joy throughout creation. And it's like the sacrifices to God are thanksgiving and giving praise. It's like experiencing creation, having joy from it. It's like the return is like we're thankful to the Creator. We give thanks and praise to God. Those are like the sacrifices that we return. Instead of like being entitled, like, I deserve this. Get out of here. So yeah, that's part one of why I agree with Shia. Shia LaBeouf, part one, joy is sacred. Rebecca agrees. Yep. So don't forget, go fuck with GK Buell. Okay, thanks. Bye.